Good morning, everyone. I'm really, really excited to be here. This is the first ever tech inclusion event in New York City. I'm really, really glad. Welcome to New York, Tech Inclusion. Um, I'm also excited to see the rest of the day's events that include many of my colleagues. So at 11:15, there's a specific talk on policy. There's actually two events, both with folks also from the city of New York, Kristen Titus, and who runs our tech talent pipeline, as well as Victor Calise, who is the commissioner for our mayor's office of people with disabilities. So it's really, really great to have a lot of my city colleagues here. So I'm going to talk about why inclusion is so important to New York City's tech community and to building a smart and equitable city. So, you know, a lot of folks have written about how this is really New York's tech moment. I mean, we've got an amazing tech community here, and I say community because we're not just a tech sector. We really are a community. We all know each other. We all, like, hey, Michael. We all know each other. We love hanging out at events together. We actually are friends with each other. So we're so much more than just a tech sector. And it's been growing. It's the fastest growing tech ecosystem in the country with 300,000 jobs, 30 billion in annual revenues. And we are really at the center of lots of different industries. So we think about them as hyphen techs, you know. So we have health, we have health tech. We have finance tech. We have advertising tech, media, arts, creative tech. So we're in addition to having a really strong high-tech industry here, we also have all of the combinations and amazing innovative collisions that happen when you have industry and technology interacting with each other. And we also are a pretty diverse place. According to Lonely Planet, Queens has the most diverse folks in the smallest amount of space. We have 160 languages, 100 nationalities spoken in here. And we're a great launching point for European startups. Now, that's all good. And so now tech is in everything. But we also feel that in New York, tech is for everyone. And, you know, I don't like to dwell on the problems. Today we're going to focus on solutions. But we all know that there's an abysmal number of representation of minorities and women and people with varied abilities in the tech economy. So you've got this tech economy that's growing so strong, but right now it's not for everyone. Just to cite one number, the EEOC just published that, you know, only 7% in high tech are African Americans, compared to 14% across all industries. With Hispanics, it's 8%, and women, 36%. And when I started out in technology 30 years ago, I got to see a time when people really didn't know what being a techie was. And there was about a third of the programming classes that I was in were women. And now in some schools, that number is below 6% women in those classes. So what are we going to do about it? Well, one of the things that happened was Mayor de Blasio created the role of the Chief Technology Officer of New York. I like to say I'm the nerd in City Hall. Everyone else are elected officials or lawyers, and they know all about government, but I'm just the nerd. I sit in there right about where that arrow is pointing in the bullpen on the second floor. And we created the Mayor's Office of Tech and Innovation. And so, you know, government doesn't have all the answers. I left private sector, 30 years in technology. Grew up in New York. I grew up in Flushing, Queens. I went to all New York City public schools. I went to Bronx Science. Any Bronx Science in here? And, you know, it was so important to me that the first ever CTO of New York be a New Yorker who looks like me a girl from Queens who went up through public schools. That was real important to me. And it was also the opportunity to take a lot of my 30 years of private sector experience. I started a startup in the 80s in Silicon Valley. I sold that. I got into artificial intelligence, mobile technology. I wrote 4 US patents in AI, actually. And then I spent the last 10 years as, CTO in financial services. And most recently, running the Asia Pac region for a large global bank. And coming into City Hall was the best job I ever had. And because it was an opportunity to have impact on things that I really cared about. Inclusion, and closing the tech divide. One of my jobs is to develop and help implement the citywide tech strategy. And it could be boiled down to 3 things: talent, access, and innovation. Like I said, government doesn't have all the answers, but we are making a lot of progress. For example, the recent passing of Law 683, it's a local law that mandates accessibility of all city agency websites. So as more and more city services become digital, it's really important that everyone has access to those, no matter whether they have internet access or not, no matter whether they have, differently abled or not. So talent, so I'll run through these 3 things real quick. Talent, the number one thing that companies, when they come to New York, they come here for the talent, and they are hungry for the tech talent that they need to grow the tech sector. So this isn't just about, fairness. It really is an economic imperative that we have the tech talent here in New York to grow our tech ecosystem. The U.S. Department of Labor published recently that there will be 1.4 million tech jobs available by the year 2020. And yet we as a country have a pipeline to fill only 29% of those jobs. So over 70% will go unfilled if we don't do something about it. So we've got a few programs. One, working with our fantastic city universities. The Tech Prep program is to help those CUNY students not only get software development skills, but match them up with tech companies when they graduate. The New York City Tech Talent Pipeline, which is headed by Kristen Titus, who's going to speak later. That's an industry public-private partnership, and that supports the growth of the city's tech sector by doing this unique thing where we match what companies need, we find low opportunity folks and give them the training to get into those jobs. So we've seen folks move from being unemployed or underemployed to a starting salary of $65,000 a year as an iOS developer. It helps the companies, it helps the people, it gives people a lot of opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Another great public-private partnership that we launched last October is called CS for All. Have you guys heard about Computer Science for All? It is a 10-year program that is designed to provide computer science education to every New York City public school kid within the next 10 years. And this is real important. I remember I was at an event that a young woman came up to me and she said, I've been taking computer science up in Riverdale for the last 3 years, and I've been the only girl in my class. She was a high school student. And she said, what are you going to do about it? And as we know, a lot of girls just decide not to take computer science. They think it's not for them. Or they get this sort of message that being a technologist is a boy thing, right? And talk about a clear message. You're the only girl in the class for 3 years. That's a pretty strong message, right? So, in my mind, it was like, well, if everybody just has to take it, then maybe it would be a little more equally distributed. And this program that we just launched is again, it's important to understand, it's CSNYC, Computer Science NYC, which was a nonprofit foundation which partnered with the New York City Department of Education to do this together. So we're working very closely with them, and we need mentors, we need sponsors, but it's going really well. We've got hundreds of schools on track to get on board. The plan is we're also training teachers, right? Because how can you teach computer science without the teachers to do it? So a lot of the teachers are getting special training to be able to teach computer science in their classes. We'll see the results of these soon. I go to visit the schools, and it's one of the most inspiring things I do. Let's talk about internet access. So internet access, to me, is like the water and electricity of 100 years ago. Imagine if you had to pay for fresh water. 100 years ago, it wasn't always readily available. The thing with the internet is it's now become as an essential utility as water and electricity were back then. In New York City, according to the Center for Economic Opportunity, 22% of New Yorkers do not have internet access at home. And we know that this is an affordability issue because when you look below the poverty line, that number jumps to 36% of New Yorkers below the poverty line don't have access to the internet at home. I don't know about you, but when my internet is out, I can't do anything. But more importantly, it's not just inconvenient. It creates a digital divide. It creates an educational divide, an employment divide, informational divide. Everything comes through the internet now. So this is one of the biggest issues we're facing in our new digital economy, that if we don't have equity of access, we will never have equity in anything else. So the city has spun off a couple of initiatives. One, have you guys seen the Link NYC? We are turning all the payphones into free Wi-Fi hotspots over the next 5 to 6 years. We've just started. There's a couple hundred in the streets now. They're up and down 3rd Avenue and up and down 8th Avenue. If you walk out of here, actually, and go to 18th Street and 8th Avenue, you'll see one of them. What's great about this is it's going to provide free Wi-Fi on the streets in the same way that you could, make a phone call. But instead, the modern version is you get fast, free, secure Wi-Fi. It's all paid for by digital advertising. It's ADA compliant. And the advertising itself also will open up opportunities for people to buy 1 second or 2 second ads, as opposed to having to pay for 2 months of the paper wraparounds that you see there. So it's all good all around. The Economic Development Corporation and other agencies in the city have worked to provide Wi-Fi access in public housing. So we're working with NYCHA to provide housing developments with free internet. My office sent out a call for innovations, looking for creative ideas. And we're also wiring up business zones, because also we want to encourage businesses to come to New York, and they will need internet access. Finally, I'll talk about our innovation initiatives. So really, it's 3 approaches. Public-private partnerships we've talked about before. Problem-based challenges like our call for innovations and hackathons and other challenges. We want to engage with more and more organizations with that. And with city agencies, we work on prototypes and pilots. So instead of buying 1,000 new devices, we'll try it out first with a few and make sure that they work and do a more iterative approach. So we call this a smart and equitable city. We're very focused on picking smart city tech that actually benefits everyone. One of my favorite examples is pictured here. It's a smart park bench. What's a smart park bench? Actually, it's a standalone solar-powered park bench where you can charge your phone and have a place to sit and catch some sun. But it also counts how many phones go by. So it lets us be able to track usage of the park. In this case, it's up in High Bridge Park. And we put one on either side of the bridge. It connects Manhattan and the Bronx. This is actually my picture. I rode my bike up there, took this picture. That's my bike in the background. And it's really beautiful. It's so important to have parks in the city. We also issued the citywide Internet of Things guidelines. That is, again, trying to provide some guidelines to help influence the rest of the world and how they implement things. And then another really fun one is the Taxi Innovation Challenge. So we do these things. You might end up in a yellow taxi with a little sign. It's getting feedback on what should we do with the taxi TVs. So if you're lucky enough to get in one of those taxis, you'll have the opportunity to have input on what you think should be in front of your face when you're in a taxi. We also issued the New York City Digital Playbook. And a big part of that is setting agency guidelines for how we should set up government services so that they are more accessible in more languages and mobile enabled. It's all kinds of equity there. Sustainability is another big part of what we do. This is one of my favorite. We actually have a booklet on our site which shows more of these, but I picked this one a lot because it's just so smart. It's called Traffic Signal Prioritization. And basically there's GPS in the bus and a detector in almost 12,000 signals. And when it detects that there's a public bus going by, it changes the prioritization on the light so that it lets the public transit go past. We have found that in the pilot that so it reduces delays in public transit by 20%. So talk about knowing that if you get in a bus, it'll be faster than any other way to get there. So it hits all kinds of great goals. So in closing, we talked about talent, access, and innovation, and the importance of inclusion, and this important event like today, talking and spending the day thinking of solutions around inclusion and technology. Diversity is New York City's secret sauce. We are well poised to be the most inclusive tech sector in the world. That's my goal. And I look around this room and I think that there's hope for the future in achieving that goal. I'm going to close with one of my favorite quotes from science fiction writer William Gibson. He said, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." So our job is to more evenly distribute the future and make it accessible and available to everyone, to all New Yorkers, to everyone in the world. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the day. One plug for myself, the New York City technology is hiring. We're looking for great people like you to come and work and do have a great impact on New York. As someone who's just converted from private sector to public sector, I'll tell you it's the hardest and most rewarding job you'll ever have. So come to nyc.gov/techjobs, and hopefully we'll see you later. Thank you very much.